기억을 떠올릴 때마다 생생하게 살아날 것이다. 나의 시간 속에 존재할 숱한 순간의 아버지가 문득 그리워졌다. 야라님, 되게 마음이 자주 힘드실 것 같아요. 그치만 한 가지 꼭 기억해 주셨으면 하는 거는 정말 애도에는 정해진 시간이 없다는 겁니다. 사람마다 필요한 시간도 1년이든 10년이든 20년이든 다 다를 수밖에 없어요. 시간이 지나면 잔잔한 기쁨이 조금씩 차오를 거라고 생각합니다. 저희는 야라님의 슬픔이 조금씩 옅어지면 좋겠어요. 그리고 그 자리에는 충만한 사랑과 기쁨이 가득 찰 거라고 믿습니다.
상처는 우리가 얼마나 사랑했는지를 나타내는 증거다. 그래서 상처는 아름다운 것이다. 이런 말이 있더라고요. 이 말이 야라님께 위로가 되길 바라면서 이번 사연 여기서 마치겠습니다. 북포유
당신을 위한 책
안녕.
To set the facts straight. Get Korea right.
한반도에서 가장 먼저 아침이 시작되는 곳. 대한민국 최동단에 위치한 섬. 천연기념물 제336호로 지정된 자연유산. 이곳은 경상북도 울릉군 울릉읍 독도입니다. 그런데 일본이 대한민국 고유 영토인 독도를 일본 영토라며 일방적으로 주장하고 있어요. 그 때문에 독도와 관련된 잘못된 정보들이 퍼지고 있답니다. 안녕하세요. 저는 방크에서 활동하는 성혜승 연구원입니다. 방크는 1999년에 설립된 후 지속적으로 독도 바로 알리기 활동을 하고 있는데요. 지금부터 제가 독도에 대한 올바른 정보를 알려드리겠습니다. 독도는 역사적, 지리적, 국제법적으로 명백하게 대한민국 영토라고 할 수 있어요. 대한민국에 현존하는 가장 오래된 역사책인 삼국사기에 보면 독도는 신라 지증왕 13년, 그러니까 512년 전부터 한국 역사에 등장합니다. 대략 1500년 전부터 독도는 우리의 영토였던 거죠. 독도가 한국 땅이라는 역사적 증거는 이렇게 차고 넘쳐요. 지리적으로 살펴보면 일본 영토에서는 독도가 보이지 않지만 독도와 87km 떨어진 울릉도에서는 독도가 육안으로도 보일 정도로 가깝죠. 그리고 또 한 가지 중요한 사실. 독도에는 대한민국 독도경비대가 상주하고 있어요. 왜냐고요? 독도는 명백하게 대한민국이 지배하는 곳이니까요. 독도가 대한민국 고유의 영토라는 사실, 이제 확실히 아시겠죠? 한국 바로 알리기, 여러분도 함께 해주세요.
Jeju, a city that holds 1,000 years of history. The cherished values preserved over time have shaped who we are today. Now, through new encounters, we step into a better future. Sustainability, innovation. With the spirit of connection, a new millennium story begins. As APEC and Jeju come together. APEC meets Jeju.
In our headlines on this Friday, September 26th, here in South Korea. At the New York Stock Exchange, President Lee Jae-myung hosts the Korea Investment Summit, urging heavyweight financiers and business leaders to invest in Korea following his official UN-related engagements. And U.S. President Donald Trump claims South Korea's $350 billion investment is an upfront payment, despite ongoing bilateral negotiations dampening investor sentiment on the local bourse, which closed down on this Friday. Meanwhile, here on the Korean Peninsula, a North Korean merchant vessel violates the de facto inter-Korean sea border, the Northern Limit Line, earlier on this Friday, before retreating after warning broadcasts and warning shots from the South Korean military. President Lee Jae-myung became the first South Korean president to host an investment forum at the New York Stock Exchange. Our presidential office correspondent Song Yoo-jin starts us off.
This is South Korean President Lee Jae-myung ringing the iconic opening bell at the New York Stock Exchange on Thursday. At the world's largest stock exchange by trading volume and the oldest on Wall Street, President Lee hosted the Korea Investment Summit, where he urged heavyweight financiers and business leaders to invest more in South Korea. The key topic was the so-called Korea discount, a term describing how South Korean companies are often undervalued compared to their global peers. President Lee cited geopolitical tensions on the Korean Peninsula as a major cause.
남북 대치, 군사적 대치 때문에 오는 불안정성, 이로 인한 저평가, 휴전 중인 나라인데 또 군사 밀도도 높고 혹시 무슨 일 생기지 않을까?
Highlighting North Korea's advances in missile technology, Lee emphasized his three-stage roadmap of nuclear suspension, reduction, and eventual denuclearization. He once again described U.S. President Donald Trump as the only one capable of brokering such a deal, a peacemaker, while pledging that South Korea will act as a pacemaker supporting the process. The president also outlined measures to make South Korea's investment environment more transparent and trustworthy, including stricter action against stock manipulation and unfair trading practices, and further amendments to the Commercial Act to better protect minority and individual investors. Regarding foreign investors, Lee pledged to resolve issues that many of them see as barriers to entry.
핵심은 역시 요게 환거래 시장 문제라고 제가 들었습니다. 그 문제도 저희가 아주 빠른 시간 내에 저희가 또 해소할 생각입니다. 지금 외국 간 거래 시장도 지금 시간 제한이 꽤 있는데 그 시간 제한을 거의 없애는 방향으로.
Currently, South Korea's foreign exchange market operates from 9 a.m. to 2 a.m. the following day, and the Korean won lacks a full offshore trading market. While Lee is the fourth South Korean president to host such an investment event in New York, he was the first to hold it at the New York Stock Exchange.
So, with this, President Lee has wrapped up his trip to New York, which focused on diplomacy and economic outreach. He will return home on South Korea's presidential jet on Friday. Song Yoo-jin, Arirang News, New York.
Indeed, the president's UN agenda has come to a close and he is now on his way back home. And while we await his return, Arirang's Yoon Jung-min walks us through his diplomatic engagements over the past few days.
The highlight of President Lee Jae-myung's week-long U.S. trip was his first speech at the 80th United Nations General Assembly.
저는 오늘 세계 시민의 등불이 될 새로운 대한민국이 국제사회에 완전히 복귀했음을 당당하게 선언합니다.
He was referring to Korea's recovery from the martial law incident last December as he introduced a new initiative to end confrontation on the Korean peninsula.
교류, 관계 정상화, 비핵화, 즉 END를 중심으로 한 포괄적인 대화로 한반도에서의 적대와 대결의 시대를 종식하고 평화 공존과 공동 성장의 새 시대를 열어가야 합니다.
Another key takeaway was South Korea leading an open debate at the UN Security Council for the responsible use of AI at a time of growing uncertainty. No other South Korean leader has presided over the debate as chair.
대한민국은 글로벌 책임 강국으로서 AI가 인류의 지속 가능한 미래를 만드는 훌륭한 도구가 될 수 있도록 국제사회와의 협력을 주도하는 길에 앞장설 것입니다.
Lee's UN debut means a lot for Korea's summit diplomacy, says his national security advisor, Ri Sung-nak.
President Lee's trip to the United Nations shows summit diplomacy is now on a stable trajectory, something which has unfolded very quickly since the G7 summit right after he took office in June.
Economic diplomacy was also at the center, with Lee having met BlackRock CEO Larry Fink, American financiers, and leaders from European countries, including the Czech Republic, for economic cooperation. The president also met U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent amid the allies' stalled trade talks to lower Trump's sweeping tariffs.
This was President Lee's debut on the UN stage, a major platform for multilateral diplomacy and dialogue. As he concludes his U.S. trip, more summit diplomacy awaits the South Korean leader at home next month with APEC member economies. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News, New York.
Meanwhile, the South Korean stock market lost ground on this Friday in response to remarks by U.S. President Donald Trump, who claimed South Korea's $350 billion investment will be an advance payment. Our Park Chun uncovers his latest comments, their ripple effects and broader implications.
U.S. President Donald Trump intensified pressure on South Korea on Thursday local time, insisting that the $350 billion investment package Seoul pledged in ongoing trade talks must be paid up front as a precondition for tariff relief. This remark, delivered during a White House signing ceremony for a TikTok deal, highlights the deepening differences of opinion in negotiations and escalates trade tensions between South Korea and the U.S. Following this announcement, South Korea's benchmark Kospi saw a significant drop of 2.4% on Friday compared to Thursday's market close.
There's growing uncertainty over investment talks between South Korea and the U.S., especially after Trump raised the issue of an upfront payment. That pushed the $1 rate to $14.10 and weakened investor sentiment. If talks collapse, higher tariffs and volatile exchange rates could further pressure local markets.
According to a Wall Street Journal report on Thursday, U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick has suggested Seoul increase the investment package beyond $350 billion, closer to Japan's $550 billion, with the U.S. looking for more of the funding to be provided in cash rather than loans. Lutnick stressed that although South Korea may not match Japan's $550 billion commitment, Seoul should accept similar terms. However, an economics professor claims that providing $350 billion in cash at present is impossible without a currency swap. And he said that immediately providing cash could harm the mutual interests of both South Korea and the United States.
People think South Korea has plenty of cash, but most of its $400 billion reserves are in U.S. treasuries, not cash. To raise dollars, South Korea needs to sell those bonds, which could shake the U.S. Treasury market. Japan would face the same situation, so it's unclear if that's good for the U.S.
Although specific terms for the investment package have not yet been agreed upon, negotiations are expected to remain difficult and could go on for an extended period. 박준한, Arirang News.
In other news, a South Korean national who was detained during the ICE raid at the Hyundai plant in Georgia has been granted bail and is expected to be released soon. Now, this comes as the immigration court in Georgia held a bail hearing and granted the release of the individual in question. This person was the only one among the over 300 South Koreans detained who chose to remain in the U.S. rather than return to South Korea. The individual is said to have been in the process of obtaining U.S. permanent residency while residing in the U.S. with family. On the international front, Spain and Italy are sending naval ships to protect a coalition of aid ships sailing toward Gaza amid reports of drone assaults. Our Ising-jae has details.
Spain and Italy are stepping up their naval presence in the Mediterranean to protect the global Samud flotilla, a coalition of aid ships sailing toward Gaza. The flotilla has come under repeated drone attacks in recent days, which organizers blame on Israel. Italy said Thursday it is sending a second naval vessel, following the deployment of a frigate after one such attack earlier this week. Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez, speaking from New York where he's attending the UN General Assembly, announced that a warship will leave Cartagena on Friday. He emphasized that international law must be respected and noted that citizens from 45 nations are part of the aid mission. The naval assistance comes as flotilla organizers reported that multiple boats were attacked by low-flying drones on Wednesday night. Passengers aboard the flotilla say drones dropped flashbangs and unidentified objects close to their vessels. Meanwhile, inside Gaza, the Israeli military has intensified its ground offensives on Gaza City. The Times of Israel reported that roughly 700,000 residents have now fled, which is around two-thirds of the city's pre-war population. However, civilian deaths continue, as 11 people were killed in a strike on a home in central Gaza. According to Gaza's health ministry, more than 65,000 people have been killed since October 7, 2023. Over in Washington, President Donald Trump said he believes a deal to end the war could be close.
We had a really great meeting. I think a lot was determined at that meeting, and I have to meet with Israel, and I have to do that also. They know what I want. And I think we can get that one done. I hope we can get it done.
According to U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, Trump has outlined a 21-point peace plan for Gaza and the Middle East in talks with leaders of Muslim-majority nations on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly. Ising-jae, Arirang News.
The National Assembly is poised to vote on a crucial government restructuring bill that had been stalled by a filibuster earlier launched by the opposition party. Our political correspondent Moon Hae-ryun has the latest.
A battle over the future of the prosecutor's office comes to a head today as the National Assembly prepares to vote on a government restructuring bill stalled by a PPP filibuster. The ruling Democratic Party moved to end the debate around 6:30 p.m. on Thursday, setting the stage for a vote to terminate the filibuster 24 hours later. Ending the filibuster requires a 3/5 majority vote, but with the DP supermajority, the move is all but assured. That would clear the way for a swift passage of the bill to amend the Government Organization Act. Government restructuring is a common practice for new administrations in Korea, with many pursuing such changes in the early stages of their term. The current proposal would overhaul several key agencies, including the Prosecution Service, the Ministry of Economy and Finance, the Ministry of Environment, and the Ministry of Trade. Under the new plan, the prosecutor's office will be dismantled and replaced by two new agencies to separate the investigative and prosecutorial functions of the office. The Ministry of Economy and Finance will also be divided, splitting its key functions of fiscal planning and budget allocation between two new bodies. As for the Ministry of Environment, it will be rebranded as the Ministry of Climate, Energy and Environment, taking on energy-related duties from the existing Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy. Next in line is the DP-backed bill to amend the Act on the Establishment and Operation of the Korea Communications Commission, which the PPP has already vowed to block with another filibuster. That legislation would scrap the KCC and replace it with a new Broadcasting, Media and Telecommunications Commission. The new body would assume the KCC's current responsibilities and also take on additional media promotion functions, including the oversight of paid broadcasting. With two more contentious bills still left on the agenda and the PPP pledging to filibuster each of them, delays are expected to hit October's regular session. 문혜련, Arirang News.
A North Korean merchant vessel violated the de facto inter-Korean sea border, the Northern Limit Line, earlier on this Friday. According to South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff, the ship crossed the NLL near Jeolla-do Island in the West Sea at around 5 a.m. The South Korean military issued warning broadcasts and fired warning shots in accordance with its standard operating procedure. The North Korean vessel in response retreated. The military here is maintaining its readiness posture to defend the NLL, which North Korea has referred to as a ghost line without legal grounds. The Lee Jae-myung administration has appointed its first ambassador to Japan. According to the Foreign Ministry on this Friday, Korea diplomat Lee Hyuk will be heading South Korea's diplomatic mission in Tokyo. He previously held several posts at the Korean embassy in Japan, including Director General for Asian and Pacific Affairs. He currently chairs the Korea-Japan Future Forum. Once in office, he is expected to coordinate a potential summit between President Lee Jae-myung and Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba in the Korean port city of Busan next week. And capital Seoul has become the venue of public diplomacy this week as culture seeks to connect people beyond their national borders. Our Park Hyo-bin files this report.
Dancing, music, and shared laughter. What may look like a festival is in fact a stage for diplomacy. Unlike traditional diplomacy that centers on government negotiations, public diplomacy brings citizens themselves to the forefront of culture exchanges. And this week, Seoul has become the very meeting ground as it hosts the 7th Public Diplomacy Week under the theme Connecting the World Together. More than 30 foreign embassies and cultural centers in South Korea are taking part.
The event is more than just seeing different cultures. It allows visitors to take part, which enables a real culture exchange to happen.
At Poland's booth, a lace-making session is in full swing. Visitors carefully weave lace out of thread finer than a strand of hair. Each stitch reveals the intricacy of Polish craft, drawing curious eyes and hands into the process.
I've always liked knitting, so when I heard this was traditional crocheting from a country I didn't know well, I was curious to try. It's more fun than I expected.
Meanwhile, at the Columbia booth, vibrant music fills the air as dancers perform the traditional rhythm, kumbancha. Moments later, a workshop transforms dance into dialogue as visitors learn steps and instruments directly from the performers.
Well, culture and arts can strengthen the diplomacy between the two countries. And today we brought music, but there are several other expressions, particularly in Colombia. So what we are trying to do is have a comprehensive portfolio of cultural expressions and basically literally cross the world to show it to Korea.
By using culture and art as a medium, the event demonstrates the power of public diplomacy that transcends borders. Organizers say it proves that diplomacy is not confined to meeting rooms, but can also flourish in everyday culture exchanges.
Public diplomacy is about two-way exchange between our citizens and foreigners in South Korea, deepening mutual understanding and allowing people to share South Korea with the world while learning from other cultures.
Public Diplomacy Week, which runs until this Saturday, proves that in today's world, culture has the power to act as diplomacy itself. Park Hyo-bin, Arirang News.
And curtains have gone up on the Dronesoccer World Cup in the city of Jeju here in South Korea, where teams from over 30 nations are competing. Park Eun-woo covers some of the action taking place in the air.
After the referee blows the whistle, 5 players on each team start to fly for their fierce battle. Unlike regular soccer matches, it's not athletes running on grass. It's these spear-shaped flying machines buzzing through the air.
This drone soccer ball looks just like any other sports ball, but once you switch it on, it's now ready to take off and fly into the ring that's set way above the ground.
Controlled by each pilot, the drones each have their own roles. Those in attacking position aim to shoot, and those in defense block the rings. During the game, collisions are fierce, with drones crashing to the ground. But just like human players shaking off an injury, they quickly rise again and rejoin the game. Matches that are tied even go to penalty shootouts, where one drone has just 5 seconds to score as many as it can, while another drone blocks the ring. This intense competition is happening at the world's first Dronesoccer World Cup in Jeju for 4 days through the weekend. Around 1,600 participants from 33 countries across 6 continents are taking part.
Drone is getting so popular in over the world, and then I looked into the whole game. It's a new sport, and it's really innovation, and it's so exciting.
Korean techniques are the highest level of all the world, so we came here to learn about how they play in teams, and also what material they use, because it's important how the drone is assembled.
As the birthplace of drone soccer, Korea has been dominating many of the matches, and some pilots share what's required to be a great player.
Piloting skills are the fundamentals, so I practice 4 to 5 hours a day. But as a team, communication is just as important, so we constantly shout instructions, who's attacking, who's defending during the game.
Both club members and national teams continue to compete, with the country versus country tournament narrowing down from the round of 16 all the way to the final. The top 3 teams will be able to win tens of thousands of dollars in prize money. As the World Cup shows how far drone technologies has flown, drone soccer may be the next game to really soar as it takes flight from Korea to the world. Park Eun-woo, Arirang News, Jeonju.
This is The World Now, bringing you the latest stories from around the globe. In France, a Paris court has sentenced former President Nicolas Sarkozy to 5 years in prison for criminal conspiracy related to campaign funding from Libya. This is the first time a modern French head of state faces actual incarceration. On Thursday local time, a Paris criminal court found Sarkozy guilty of criminal association in a plot involving his aides and Libyan officials to solicit funds from then Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi for Sarkozy's successful 2007 presidential campaign. The court sentenced him to 5 years in prison. Sarkozy, who served as president from 2007 to 2012, described the verdict as a national humiliation and vowed to appeal. However, he will have to spend time behind bars regardless of the appeal, as a court ruled on exceptional gravity grounds. 2 close associates were also convicted. The start date has not been set yet. Also in Europe, another wave of drone activity forced airports in Denmark to close. Officials say the drones are a hybrid attack intended to spread fear. Danish authorities said on Thursday that Aalborg Airport was shut down for 3 hours late on Wednesday due to unauthorized drone activity. Billund Airport, Denmark's second largest, was also closed for an hour. Drone sightings were also reported near Esbjerg, Sønderborg, and the Skrydstrup Air Base, home to F-16 and F-35 jets. The airports reopened early on Thursday after safety checks. Danish Defense Minister Truls Lund Poulsen described the incursions as coordinated and sophisticated, calling them a systematic and deliberate hybrid attack. He said multiple drone types were used, suggesting the operation was planned by a professional actor. Justice Minister Peter Hummelgaard added that the intent is likely to create fear and division and to test Denmark's response capabilities. This is the second such incident in Denmark this week, following a drone-induced shutdown at Copenhagen Airport earlier. Protesters gathered in Mexico City on Thursday to demand transparency regarding the disappearance of 43 Ayotzinapa students in 2014 to mark the 11th anniversary of the incident. The crowd, consisting of parents, students, and activists, called on the Defense Secretary to release 800 pages of Army records related to the events of September 26, 2014. On that day, around 100 students from a teachers' college were on their way to a protest when they were intercepted by police. Clashes with the authorities led to 6 people being killed by police gunfire. 43 students went missing after the shootings, with eyewitnesses saying they were taken by police. The remains of 3 of the students have been found as of 2025. Finally, FIFA officially unveiled 3 mascots for the 2026 FIFA World Cup, reflecting all 3 host nations on Thursday. They're Clutch the bald eagle, representing the United States, Maple the moose, representing Canada, and Zayu the jaguar, representing Mexico. Each mascot embodies characteristics tied to its host nation, with Clutch being described as adventurous and unifying, Maple combining creativity and resilience, and Zayu symbolizing strength and agility. This will be the first World Cup with 3 host nations. FIFA president said the mascots will play a central role in the tournament's festive atmosphere. Choi Ji-hee, Arirang News.
Late heat has returned across the country. The morning temperatures were cool in most parts of the country, starting at around 15 degrees Celsius. In the daytime, the temperature in Seoul rose to 28 degrees, exceeding the average temperature for this time of year by about 3 degrees. A wide gap between morning and daytime temperatures will continue for the time being. It will rain in the Jeolla-do provinces and Jeju Island until tomorrow. About 10 to 60 millimeters of rain is forecast on Jeju Island and from 5 to 15 millimeters in Jeolla-do provinces. Tomorrow morning will start cool, below 20 degrees in most parts of the country. Daily highs will move back to 27 to 28 degrees nationwide with some cloud. Rain is expected all over the country again on Sunday. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
Those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. Coming up next is our daily panel session. Do stay with us.
민주주의의 위기 앞에서 대한민국 국민이 들었던 오색빛 응원봉처럼 국제사회와 유엔이 인류의 미래를 밝힐 희망의 등불을 함께 들어주십시오. 평화, 공존과 공동성장이라는 한반도의 새 시대를 향해 그리고 함께하는 더 나은 미래의 세계를 향해 우리 대한민국이 맨 앞에서 담대하게 나아가겠습니다. 대한민국은 글로벌 책임 강국으로서 AI가 인류의 지속 가능한 미래를 만드는 훌륭한 도구가 될 수 있도록 국제사회와의 협력을 주도하는 길에 앞장설 것입니다.
On Press Perspective today, we touch upon the annual International Film Festival in Busan and a new syndrome related to capital Seoul among young Chinese travelers. Do stay with us. Hello, welcome to Press Perspective. It's Friday, September 26th here in Seoul. I'm Min San-hee. It's that time of the week yet again during which we surf through, if you will, a number of stories related to the broader society and on occasion, K-culture. For this, I have writer Colin Marshall here in the studio with us. Colin, it's good to have you here.
Good to be here.
I also have Chris Tarpe, contributing writer for The Telegraph, joining this session virtually. Chris, it's been ages since we last spoke. Welcome back.
That's great to be back. Thank you.
Right, we shall start with you, Chris. Let's begin with an event there in Busan that's been making quite a bit of headlines. Chris, the Busan International Film Festival comes to a close on this Friday after having hosted an elaborate event to mark its 30th birthday. Do tell us more, Chris.
Yeah, today is the closing ceremony, and it's been a great 10 days of BIFF this year. I think they celebrated the 30th anniversary in style. I've been covering it as I've covered BIFF on and on for different publications over the years. This time, I've been covering it not as a film critic. I've never been a film critic, but as part of a broader travel piece on Busan as a cultural destination. So this year, I was lucky, armed with a press pass to see a lot of movies, get into a lot of events, and of course, hit a lot of parties. And part of what I do at BIFF is just soak up the atmosphere. You know, whether I'm rubbing elbows with a director or producer at some schwanky party on in the opening night, or just talking to, you know, regular folks who are coming to see movies and are passionate about cinema, going to BIFF for me is one of the highlights of the year. It really brings something special to Busan, because sometimes down here in Busan we feel a little neglected in the shadow of Seoul. And for 10 days of the year, Busan is the most glamorous place on the Korean Peninsula, perhaps the world. You know, and this year we have all sorts of A-list directors from Bong Joon-ho and Park Jung-wook, whose new movie is making a splash in Europe and elsewhere. Juliette Binoche and Guillermo del Toro, the Mexican director, and all sorts of celebrities made it out this year to celebrate the 30th anniversary in style. So I was really happy to be a part of it, as always. I've come a long ways from my early days covering it for the local English language magazine and going to parties and posting posts at 4 a.m. So I'm glad that they still let me in, and I hope that BIFF continues to be this wonderful institution here in Busan.
Right, I am so envious of that. All right, Colin, the French media claims the Busan Film Gala shares the strength of Asian cinema. What do you believe is the strength?
Yes, first I'm sorry to say that I've missed 30 Busan International Film Festivals in a row. One of these years I will get over there. It's unfortunate because Korean film was a big part of why I became interested in Korea in the first place. But yes, this is a question I've thought about much as well, the sort of power or the appeal, the allure of Asian cinema. And this article was in France 24, the French media sort of global arm, much like Arirang. And the quote was specifically from a filmmaker who has a pen name or a nom de guerre, Kogo Nara. He's a Korean American, actually, born in Korea, raised in the US, and he made a big splash with a film I liked very much called Columbus a few years ago, and he's now on the jury. He was on the jury at the Busan Film Festival. And he, I think, in his movies, which are all American in one sense or another, has tried to infuse what I think he would describe, because it's his quote, as an Asian sensibility. And what might that mean? Well, to my mind, part of it is a willingness to break with the strictures of genre convention as you would see in Hollywood movies. Now, Hollywood movies do a very good job of adhering to their genres, you know, being the most action-y action movie you can ever see, or, you know, the most romantic comedy you could ever watch. Maybe that's a dated reference now. Rom-coms are kind of gone by the roadside. But in any case, for me, and when I was growing up as a sort of cinephile or becoming a cinephile, I was drawn in many ways more to Asian cinema more broadly than I had plenty of favorite US directors and European directors, but somehow I kept returning to the Japanese ones, to Hong Kong filmmakers, Taiwanese, and later Korean filmmakers as well. And I was just thinking about this yesterday when I was seeing the new film that Chris referenced, 어쩔 수가 없다, or No Other Choice, I believe it is, the new Park Chan-wook film. And he did this film, Park Chan-wook, with the big star. What's the guy's? It's slipping my mind.
Lee Byung-hun.
Lee Byung-hun, yes, there we go. He's so big, his name isn't coming to me. This was a reunion for them. They did the film Joint Security Area in 2000, which was the first Korean film I ever saw, in fact. So seeing the new movie, No Other Choice, I was reminded, hey, this also has something of that, what I would think of as the appeal of Asian cinema, in that it is a genre film in some respect. You could call it a black comedy, but it does mix in a very wide emotional and aesthetic range. It has a greater range in one film than you would expect or even be allowed to accomplish in Hollywood. And ironically, this new film is being praised very highly. It's been being given extreme praise in the West. In Korea, the reviews are not quite so good. So in a way, that aspect of Asian cinema may be more beloved outside, at least this part of Asia right now.
Right. Chris, foreign media coverage of the latest Busan Film Fiesta also included commentary about the challenges faced by the South Korean movie industry. What appeared to be the main challenges, Chris? I mean, you have clarified earlier on that you're not a movie critic, but based on your rubbing of shoulders, elbows with the big names there in Busan, what have you been hearing?
Yeah, this certainly came up. And of course, at the festival, you wouldn't know it because it looked like cinema was alive and well and very healthy, but that you're only getting one piece of the puzzle, aren't you? You know, that's the party they have every year. But when it comes to the day-to-day realities economically of Korean cinema, the signs aren't so good right now. I mean, artistically, they've reached some great heights, but right now what we have is dropping attendance. You know, people aren't just going to the cinema like they used to. People are staying home and, you know, watching streaming. And I know that's true with myself and my wife. Most of the films we watch are, you know, on our couch with our dogs and, you know, and some chicken that we ordered in. It's pretty rare that we go to the cinema, or I go to the cinema pretty much, see a couple films a year, and I'll attend the festival. And there's numbers to back this up. According to the Korean Film Council, attendance was down by 32.5% over the first half of 2025. That's a pretty big drop. And of course, they blame this on streaming platforms, which keep us at home, and also just the dwindling amount of choices. They're just not making as many films. There's shrinking production. Also, there's soaring costs of making movies. It's cheaper to make a film in Korea, which has fed some of the production here, than, of course, in the States, where it's prohibitively expensive. But it's still not cheap, and it's getting more expensive every day. And another big thing, which a lot of people don't realize, is brain drain is a big problem. A lot of the new talent, a lot of the directors and the screenwriters who would be the new Park Chan-wook, the new auteur for Korean cinema, a lot of these guys and folks, they are not going into movie making. Instead, they're, again, attracted to streaming services and television. As Korean dramas, I think, are doing very well. But so some of the top tier talent that would otherwise be the next generation of filmmakers is going into a kind of the more lucrative work, where it's easier to make money and it's easier to get your projects done. So when you combine all of this, it's kind of a dark cloud on Korean cinema. But I think these trends are probably worldwide. I haven't looked at the numbers, but I think generally, perhaps not in India, but certainly in Western countries, people are not attending the cinema like they're used to. And this is a problem. But of course, what are the prospects of going forward? The new BIFF director, Jung Han-sok, who takes the chair after 2 years of absence, where we had no director at BIFF. He says he's optimistic. He says a film festival like BIFF provides an opportunity that can inspire audiences and hopefully get them coming to the theater. And perhaps he's right, but I think it's probably a case of a drop of water in the bucket where we will see a downward trend of in-person movie attendance. But that doesn't mean cinema will die, but I think it's going to have to evolve. It's not going to be the behemoth it once was.
Right. Well, perhaps fully aware of the situation here in South Korea, President Lee Jae-myung, he spoke about support for the film industry here in the country upon his visit to the Busan Film Festival with First Lady Kim Hye-kyung. Could you tell us a bit more about the significance of such government support, Colin?
Yes, the first couple were right there in the audience. I'm not sure what movies they saw. They probably saw the new Park Chan-wook, I'll tell you that. This is an event. I mean, my wife and I have newborn twins at home, but we went out to the theater because you have to see the new Park Chan-wook movie. I mean, he is one of the filmmakers who is 21st century Korean cinema. But yes, government support for the Korean film industry is not something entirely new, of course, although this is not so much discussed these days, but Korean cinema did benefit from different forms of support early on, most notably the screen quota system, which mandated that theaters in Korea had to show a certain number of Korean productions in order to qualify to play Hollywood movies, or any foreign movies, but in effect, in practice, Hollywood movies. So this system had its downsides. There were a lot of so-called quota quickies made in the 70s and 80s just to get the rights to play Hollywood movies that would make money. I kind of like some of these quota quickies from the 70s and 80s, to be honest. You know, they have their appeal, they have their charm, they're not without it. But at some point, the Korean film grew and prospered to the extent that it didn't need really the screen quota system. It could hold its own, and still can in many respects. But people do forget, or maybe never knew at this point, how important Korean cinema was to the Korean wave before it was called that, the pre-Hallyu, especially in the West. The rest of Asia too, but in the West, before any Westerner had ever seen K-drama or heard K-pop or knew those words, many had seen Korean films, especially if they were cinephiles. Those were the ones, the festival goers knew that Korean cinema by Park Chan-wook and other filmmakers, Lee Chang-dong, Kim Ki-duk, Hong Sang-soo, this was something new and something more interesting than most other national cinematic cultures were putting out at the time. And again, Busan Film Festival, 30 years old now, that's about the time frame we're talking about. Back in the 90s was when everything really began happening for Korean film internationally. But we do have to ask, would this have happened if not for the support the film industry was receiving? So potentially, because there is this precedent, maybe whatever Lee Jae-myung plans to do will have a positive effect. We don't know that much, I think, about the specifics about his plans, but I'm sure it won't be nothing, and the effect won't be nothing. But I think we're in a different situation than the 90s, as I think Chris alluded to. You know, in the 90s, no Netflix, no streaming. There was plenty of entertainment around. You know, there was cable TV and all that, but cinema held a larger mind share. It held a larger share of popular culture. And in the 90s, South Korea was maybe the most cinephilic country in the world. It had the most cinematically engaged public in the world, the most film publications, magazines per capita, and Korea brought in more films from the rest of the world too than most other countries. So that did a lot to help as well, not just government policy, but also just a film-loving public. And there still is one in Korea, but without that kind of public enthusiasm, I do wonder how much government aid can accomplish on a short time frame.
Right, I suppose we'll have to wait and see. In the meantime, hopefully you'll get a chance to see the Busan Film Festival when it celebrates its 31st birthday next year.
Well, before the 40th, perhaps.
Right, we'll fingers crossed. Colin, moving forward. According to South Korean media outlets, a growing number of young Chinese travelers to South Korea are reportedly suffering from something called the Seoul syndrome. Could you first begin by telling us a bit about this so-called illness?
Yes, Seoul syndrome, which brought to mind at first this idea of Paris syndrome, which is a sort of old concept dating to the days when Japanese tourists were many in the world, and they would idealize Paris, they would romanticize Paris at home, and then visit the actual Paris and find themselves beset with these psychological syndromes triggered by the disorder, the dirt, as the Japanese saw it compared to their ideal, everything that felt wrong or dangerous or unclean about Paris compared to their pristine, romanticized mental image. Seoul syndrome is the opposite. It's rather the opposite. It's Chinese tourists, young Chinese tourists, the sort of equivalent of the MZ generation, so-called in Korea, come to Korea, they stay in Seoul for a while, maybe they study, maybe they live here for a year or two, and they go back to China and they feel this sorrow, or they're beset with this depression almost, because they're comparing what they experienced in Seoul to their lives back in China, which the surroundings might not be so orderly. The people might not be as friendly to their minds. They say much about the cleanliness of the air, which is ironic because when I moved to Korea, the thing everybody wanted to warn me off about is, oh, the air is terrible there. You don't want to, try not to breathe when you live in Korea. But these Chinese people, these young Chinese people come, and the air is one of these great things that they miss when they go back to China. So this is, yes, a phenomenon of comparison, certainly, and to an extent, everybody, when they go on vacation, they return to their normal lives, and they think, oh, you know, if only I were back where I didn't have to work, right? I mean, this is about vacationing to an extent, but as well, ironically, slightly, and this has been covered in the Korean press, this happens at the same time as Koreans are traveling to China more themselves. So Koreans are going to China more, just as Chinese are coming to Korea more. And so you have this mutual, I don't know if there's any sort of Beijing, or not, maybe not Beijing, Shanghai syndrome that goes on with Koreans, but I think the interest is mutual. And with a new visa being, not a visa-free travel program being introduced very soon for Chinese, we're going to be hearing a lot more Chinese spoken on the streets of Seoul. I mean, we're already hearing a lot. That's the main foreign language on the streets, but it'll be even mainer, I suspect, soon.
Right, and staying with that, Chris, what can you tell us about the response from the Chinese media with regard to the so-called Seoul syndrome among young Chinese travelers as shared on their social media platforms, of course?
Well, as you can expect, some of the responses in the Chinese media have been quite skeptical. When the phrase Korean media verifies Chinese have soul sickness came up, a lot of users responded by they think that it's actually Koreans on the internet trying to make this a viral sensation, that it's a self-promotion sort of syndrome on behalf of Koreans to promote their own country and to perhaps make China look bad. But other people in the media have been more sympathetic. The fact that we're even hearing about it means that this is a thing, because whether it's Weibo or Xiaohongshu, the two main social media platforms in China, the content is quite controlled. So the fact that we're having this conversation in a foreign country about what's going on social media in China means that people are legitimately expressing these feelings. So it is a real thing.
Right. Colin, what do you suppose is the appeal of Seoul among these young Chinese travelers? I know you hate to speculate.
I don't know if I hate to speculate, but it brings to mind another conversation I had long ago with some Europeans. I was asking about why do so many Europeans romanticize America so much? Like, why is there such a strong interest in American culture? I mean, I understood that there were some good things about it, but coming from the US, I couldn't really get it. And so someone said to me, they said this, for us, it's like we're stepping right into a movie. We've seen America in the movies all our lives, and TV and everything else. So it's like actually being able to walk into a movie or a television show. It's just like that. You drive, you rent your car, you do a road trip, and it's like you're in a movie. And this was, he said it so definitively, so without doubt, like this is the reason. There are other reasons, I'm sure, but I understood that. And I'm sure with Chinese or other people from other Asian countries as well, they've seen so much of Korea in recent years. There are, I'm sure, many, many K-drama watchers in China, enthusiasts of Korean cinema in China. They've got so much of a heavy dose of it that when they come here, it's real. This place is real. This place I've seen. Maybe it's not just like what I've seen in the media, but it's pretty close. And so if you have a kind of fantasy, the similarities between what you see around you in Seoul and what you've seen leading up to that point will make it all the more vivid. So I think that's a part of it. They're stepping into what they've just seen on a screen, and that can be a pretty intoxicating experience, I suspect.
Right. Chris, tomorrow, that is September 27th, I believe, is World Tourism Day. Speaking within your capacity, Chris, as an established travel writer, what is your assessment of South Korea's tourism industry as we speak?
This is a good question because it's been on my mind because I recently filed an article with The Telegraph on this very subject because people are curious. Eyes are on Korea because the tourism industry is booming here. Nothing short of that would really describe it. For example, in 2024, South Korea welcomed over 16 million tourists, and that's a 48.4% increase than in 2023. And this is the biggest jump recorded on the globe out of any country. So we see that South Korea is very hot. It's been hot for a while, post-pandemic, and pre-pandemic as well. In fact, we're still not quite matching the pre-pandemic numbers, but I suspect this year, if everything goes on plan, they're projected to see perhaps over 20 million tourists. And a lot of this has to do with the, the viral sensation of the K-pop Demon Hunters, this movie on Netflix. It's the biggest successful movie on the platform in the platform's history. And evidently, ever since they released this thing in June, there has been a big spike in plane ticket reservations to come to South Korea. So that alone has moved the needle. And so when we see the cumulative effect of Hallyu, of the Korean wave around the world, films to a degree, but especially K-pop, and dramas are really doing a lot of the heavy lifting right now. A lot of people watch these dramas and come to South Korea because they want to visit the sets, or they want to go to a pojangmatcha and nurse a glass of soju like they saw their favorite actor do in the K-drama. So it's the media output and the pop culture output is having a massive effect on tourism. It's bringing people here, and the numbers just speak for themselves. So I think it will continue to increase, and the only thing that I can hope for is that Korea doesn't suffer some of the effects of over-tourism that we're seeing in Europe and even in Japan these days.
All right, that is something to keep in mind, Chris. Thank you for that. All right, I'm afraid that's all the time we have. Chris, as always, thank you so much for your insights today.
Thank you.
Colin, thank you very much for your time and your thoughts.
Thank you.
All right, that is all the time we have for this edition of Press Perspective. Thank you for watching. Have a great weekend.
천년을 이어온 우리의 지혜가 제천에서 다시 태어났어. 세대를 관통한 선조들의 건강 빅데이터. 빅데이터. 우리의 삶과 들에서 자란 천연물은 단순한 재료가 아니야. K-내추럴. 한국인의 정체성을 담은 바로 살아있는 역사지. 천년의 처방이 첨단 기술과 만나는 순간. 글로벌 천연물 시장의 중심 제천에서 2025년 9월 20일부터 10월 19일까지 천년의 지혜를 담은 미래를 만나봐.
A country where traditional and modern cultures coexist.
Where you can explore spectacular landscapes and nature.
Savor the delights of traveling at every turn.
Where? Korea, of course.
There are some must-visit places in Korea. Ones that appear in every tour guidebook: Hangang River, Gyeongbokgung Palace from the Joseon Dynasty, and...
Yes, these are essentials, but I want to go somewhere a little different. I don't have to follow the guidebook. For example, filming locations for K-pop music videos or K-dramas and movies.
Traveling is all about taking it slow. A long walk at your own pace, or even zoning out somewhere quiet. Doesn't it sound relaxing?
You travel for the experience, trying something new in a foreign place, de-stressing and making lifetime memories, taking tons of pictures along the way.
70% of the Korean territory is mountainous. Naturally, hiking is a very popular pastime in Korea. Not your kind of activity? Trust me, the view will make the effort worth it.